Hey everyone, David Rishpan here again with you on YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about AI music, AI art, generative AI, and how we can maybe train ourselves to recognize it better and why we get fooled by it. I have thoughts about this. I started thinking about this kind of came up in the forefront of my consciousness around the holidays. I was in an Uber with my girlfriend and the driver happened to play this Afro beats with an S version of Stromae's Papa Ute, which I guess has gone viral on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. Uh, and my girlfriend and I were both enjoying this cover. And then the driver said, "Hey, this is AI. Isn't it impressive that this is AI?" And then when he said that, my girlfriend, who also has musical training, significant musical training, we both started listening to see if we could hear any giveaways that it was AI. And then about a week after that, I was in another Uber. I don't drive, I take a lot of Ubers, unfortunately. And this Uber driver was playing very clearly AI generated contemporary Christian music, CCM. And it got me thinking about why people are listening to AI generated music in the first place, um, and why it's potentially easier to fool people with, I guess, what I'll just call pop music than other genres. I haven't been fed a lot of AI music on my streaming platforms of choice. Um, I have been served a lot of AI video on Instagram, and I've been duped by it a couple of times, I have to admit. Um, and my girlfriend was talking to some friends of hers who had also been fooled by the Stromae cover of Papa Ute. And that got me thinking about why it might be easier to be fooled by that kind of cover. And it's, in my estimation, this is my opinion. I'm far from an expert in AI algorithms, and I'm not a music cognition expert either. But for me, it's because we have been listening to hard tuned, super processed vocals in pop music for close to 30 years. Uh, Cher's Believe came out in, I want to say 1998 or 1999. And then everything that has come in its wake, whether it is Britney Spears or T-Pain or Akon or any artist that uses heavy autotune, but our ears as listeners, especially as passive listeners, our ears have grown accustomed to hearing artificially tuned voices, artificially processed voices. So if you're taking a human vocal and you're EQing it hard, you're compressing it hard, and you're tuning it hard, the gap between that and a completely AI generated voice, to be generous, let's just call that gap much smaller than taking a less processed human voice, something we would hear on a jazz record or an Americana record, alt country record, whatever. Uh, the gap between those genres and AI generated vocals is much more obvious and much wider than commercial pop music. Another element of this that is very clear to me, something I'm very passionate about, and I have talked about this in regards to rising noise complaints in various cities in North America, at least, with a few exceptions. we have very much become a culture of passive listening, not active listening. And so even my girlfriend and I, who are musically trained, we were listening passively in the car, and we didn't clock that we were listening to AI. And then when we started to pay attention, that's when we started to realize these artifacts or these things that are not real, that a real human performer would not do. It's not in the physiology of a real human singer to behave this way. Um, and so those were the giveaways, you know. But it was background music in our Uber. We weren't really paying attention, and so we didn't notice. And I realize as a teacher that a lot of people consume the majority of their music passively. Increasingly, I ask my students what they're listening to, and they just can't tell me. And it used to be when I first started teaching piano lessons, especially if I was teaching teenagers or adults, they wouldn't want to tell me who they were listening to, because they didn't want to seem uncool, but they knew who they were listening to. They just didn't want to admit to whatever it was that they were listening to. Now, and it's been this way for a good 10 years, people don't know what they're listening to. On streaming services, you know, people will just open a playlist and let it run. And unless you're staring at the screen, you won't know who you're listening to. And then it's gotten worse here on YouTube with these like 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour pre-made mixes of, you know, lo-fi, jazzy piano to study to or whatever. And they're completely, there's no attribution, there's no credits, there's no information about who made this music, what artists or AI or whatever was being used to make these mixes. But that's what people are consuming. That's what my students are consuming. And so they come in and they want to learn jazz piano in air quotes, and they're listening to stuff that, you know, I remember the first time a student came to me and I asked him what he was listening to, and he showed me this like generic YouTube mix. And I was like, I can't really help you with this because I don't know who this is. The example I always give in terms of, you know, our lack of cultural education, at least in North America, you know, I just turned 40, and my high school was one of the last ones to hold on to a strong music and drama program. And we got to have uh, guest artists come in and talk to us about the reality of being a professional musician, a professional actor. We went on field trips to go see live musical theater. You know, I grew up in Toronto in the era of all the big musicals. We went to go see Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. You know, Lion King was still running, Mamma Mia was still running when I was in high school. So those things were all there. There was student pricing. It was accessible for schools to go take their students to go see these shows. And the vibe, the expectation that was given to us was, you may not become a professional musician or a professional actor. You may not stay in music, but music is a part of being alive, a part of being human. And it is a métier, a career that uh, demands respect, you know, that commands respect. And so even if you don't become a practitioner of the arts, you have an awareness of the arts, you have a cultural background and exposure to the arts, and so you can make your own informed decisions about the music you like, the music you don't like, the film you like, the film you don't like, the theater you like, the TV you like, whatever, the dance you like, and understanding that if you go to see a live performance, there are people involved in the live performance, and those people deserve and merit your respect and your attention. I was one of the last cohorts of students in high school to hang on to that. So I imagine that if someone who's 5 to 10 years older than me and they were on the front line of all these budget cuts, they didn't go see musicals live. They didn't have guest speakers. They maybe didn't have a strong band program or a strong drama program. So their exposure was already limited. Let's say these people are now, I'm 40, so let's say they're 45 or 50. If they had children young, those kids would now be 20 or 25, and those kids are now having kids. So we're now 2 generations in to people who have been raised without a significant exposure to music as an active, participatory, communal experience. And so they're not passing it down because it wasn't important to their parents. So it's not important to them. There's a marked lack of curiosity on their part because that curiosity has never been fostered. And so they can't pass it on. So I'm not surprised that people who grew up in those conditions, in those cultural conditions, are getting suckered into listening to AI pop music because their consumption of music is almost entirely passive. Compare that to the fact I think it's much easier to spot AI illustration, AI design, graphic design. Whether you care about it or not is a separate issue, but I think we can all agree that we can spot when something has been generated by an AI template. I don't use AI on this channel. I refuse to use AI on this channel and in my life in any form or fashion. Don't use AI for the thumbnails, which probably probably works against me. And maybe that's why the algorithm isn't super happy with me. But I don't use AI for my thumbnails. I don't use AI for my graphic design. I'm not a graphic designer, but I'm learning the more that I do it. I'm doing the best that I can without relying on AI. I don't use any of the AI features in DaVinci Resolve. I don't use AI. Obviously, I don't use AI music. I don't use any AI organizational tools, although who knows, maybe that would help and maybe I should. But I don't. I don't want to use AI. I don't want to submit information. I don't want to participate in it. And if that makes me a Luddite or old school or whatever, it's just an ethical decision that I have made. I don't want to use it. And in having made that decision, I think that's also why, Tidal doesn't serve me a lot of or any AI music. And the one time I got fooled into clicking on an AI music centric video, again, to prove my point, and this is not meant as an insult, but someone created an AI enhanced version of Ruben Blades with Bad Bunny at the Coliseo in Puerto Rico. This actually did happen. Ruben Blades came out and sang Baile Inolvidable with Bad Bunny. That is real. After the fact, I found real crowd footage of the actual concert. But I got suckered in because you listen to Bad Bunny's productions, his voice is hard tuned. And my original assumption before I read in the caption at the very, very bottom that the voices were AI generated, I just thought Bad Bunny's engineer didn't turn off the tuning on Ruben Blades' mic. But as soon as Ruben Blades started singing in this AI version, it was so hard tuned, and the characteristic, the tonality of Ruben's voice was so different that I assumed he was just singing through Bad Bunny's vocal chain. The AI Bad Bunny and the real concert footage Bad Bunny, the gap was tiny. So I totally understand why people are getting fooled by AI music, or they're listening to AI music and they don't realize it, and or they don't care. Um, and with AI video, especially short form video on Instagram or TikTok, again, it's passive consumption. We are there doom scrolling. We're not fully paying attention to what we're watching. And if it hits us emotionally, if it affects us emotionally, our instinct is to share it and repost it, because social media has trained us to do this. But we haven't fully fully engaged with it with 100% of our attention and our care. And I think that's why um, people are counting. I mean, it's emotional manipulation at the end of the day, right? Like, people are counting on the fact that we will respond either to the dopamine hit or to the enragement bait or whatever it is. They're all very primal emotions that don't require our full engagement and attention. Going back to the communal enjoyment and the participatory nature of music, I mean, this is why I love Brazil so much, why I love Cuba, why I love New Orleans. Last time I was in Sao Paulo, I went to the Saturday Samba in Bexiga, in the historic Italian neighborhood. And on this tiny street called 13 de Maio, which is lined with bars, it's a street lined with bars, but it's in the middle of a fairly residential neighborhood as well. And just people block the street, and one bar will have a band, and then the bar across the street will have a band, and everyone's singing and dancing. And music is meant to be enjoyed with other people. I think about the first time I ever heard A Love Supreme. It was when I was 15. It was my first kind of jazz camp that I ever did, possibly the only jazz camp I ever did, I think. And it was our first night getting into our cabin, and somebody put on A Love Supreme, and hearing that music with other people changed my life. Listening to your own music in your own headphones is one thing, and I've had a lot of beautiful experiences just kind of diving into records alone in headphones, but it's a totally other phenomenon to enjoy the same music actively, collectively, with other people. And I think the further we get away from that, the more likely we are to be duped by AI. And as much as I will not use AI and do not use AI, and as protected against it as I have been, like as isolated and insulated from it as I have been, I know very well that the toothpaste is out of the tube and there's no putting it back. Um, it's here. It will continue to be here. Clearly, the streaming platforms, the DSPs, do not want to police it. They don't seem to have anything to gain by policing it. Uh, there are many, many artists who are having their profiles, for lack of a better word, hacked, with people putting up AI generated content under their name, and the DSPs either refuse to take it down or make it nearly impossible to take down. Social media platforms, as much as they try to flag content that has been AI generated or AI modified. They don't really seem interested in policing it that hard. They don't seem to have anything to gain by it either. So it's here, we are in this era of fake AI generated or AI modified content. And I think our best defense against it is to just educate ourselves on how to spot it, educate our friends and our families about how to spot it, whether it's music or video or graphic design. And if you take anything away from this video, go listen to music with other people. Listen to music with other people. I saw something on Threads a couple of weeks ago that resonated with me, that music can be the activity. It doesn't have to be the accompaniment to the activity. It can be the only activity. So I would urge you, if you take anything away from this video, sometime this week, sit down with whoever else is in your household, whether it's friends, your partner, your pets, your kids. Sit down and even just for the duration of the side of an album, so 20 minutes, which is the length of a side of vinyl. For 20 minutes, only listen to the record. Doesn't have to be on vinyl, can be on streaming, whatever. But for 20 minutes, just listen to the side of a record with your full attention, your full empathy, your full care. And let me know in the comments how that felt to do. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done so, click all the little buttons below the video, like, subscribe, bell notification. You all already know that. Everyone asks you to do it. My name's David Rishpan. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.